the quiet landowner. Ethan Marshall had never been a man of noise or chaos. His world was defined by calm mornings, the smell of coffee, and the sound of wind brushing through the tall grass of the land his grandfather left him. For generations, that land, nearly 20 acres of rolling fields and a creek that glistened under the sun, had been the pride of the Marshall family. His grandfather used to say, "Ethan, land is more than dirt. It remembers who walked on it." When his grandfather passed away, Ethan swore he would never sell it. He worked as an architect in the nearby city, but on weekends, he'd drive down to that quiet field, sit under the old oak tree, and sketch dream houses, not for profit, but for peace. One Saturday, everything changed. Ethan arrived at the land only to find heavy machinery rumbling through the field. Men in hard hats shouted orders. Survey flags dotted the grass like battle markers. And at the edge of the site stood a large billboard. "Coming soon, Meadowbrook Estates, a luxury HOA community." He was stunned. His heart pounded. He marched toward the foreman and demanded an explanation. The man looked annoyed and said, "Sorry, buddy. We've got permits, and this land's already approved. Talk to the HOA." Ethan's confusion deepened when he saw the approval file they held, with his supposed signature on the sale documents. His name. His handwriting, forged perfectly. That night, he returned home and tore through boxes of his grandfather's files until his hands shook. Finally, he found it, an envelope labeled Marshall Property, Original Deed. Inside was the truth, notarized, sealed, and never transferred. The land was still legally his. He sat back in silence. The construction lights blinked in the distance through his window. The world was moving on his land, but he had just found the one thing that could stop it. The battle behind the gates. Ethan's calls to city offices were ignored. His emails bounced back with automated replies. The HOA board refused to meet him. The project continued, as if he didn't exist. Desperate for answers, Ethan attended an HOA public meeting where he finally came face to face with Victoria Hensley, the HOA president, a confident woman in her 40s with a smile too sharp to trust. Victoria stood at the podium like a politician, talking about community progress and modern living. When Ethan raised his hand to speak, she hesitated, then invited him forward with a smirk. "Mr. Marshall, right? The landowner?" she said, drawing out the word as if mocking it. "We've reviewed your claims. Your family's documents are old. This project is legal and approved. Perhaps you're confused about where your boundaries are." The audience chuckled. Cameras flashed. Ethan felt his face flush with humiliation. But instead of arguing, he simply said, "Then I'll make sure my confusion is corrected in writing." He left the meeting quietly, while Victoria smiled for reporters. But that night, Ethan began collecting evidence. He mapped out every plot built on the property. He filed open records requests. He hired a private investigator to trace the construction permits and found a long chain of shady approvals signed by the same city clerk who'd retired suddenly a year ago. Ethan's lawyer friend, Daniel, reviewed everything and said, "They didn't buy it legally. They forged, bribed, and buried everything. You could shut the entire community down, but it'll take time. You sure you want to do this?" Ethan nodded slowly. "Let them finish. The deeper they dig, the stronger my case gets." And so, he waited, while the land of his ancestors turned into paved roads and cookie-cutter houses. Let them build. 2 years passed. Meadowbrook Estates became a sparkling new neighborhood, pastel homes, smiling families, trimmed hedges, and the constant hum of sprinklers. Children laughed in driveways, unaware that their homes stood on land stolen by deceit. Ethan would drive by occasionally, unseen behind tinted windows. Sometimes he stopped at the corner cafe across from the entrance, sipping coffee as he watched the families come and go. It wasn't hatred he felt, it was sadness. His grandfather's land had life again, but not the kind he imagined. Meanwhile, Victoria Hensley became the face of suburban success. She gave interviews, won awards, and even bought a home in the same development. The HOA thrived, collecting fees, enforcing rules, building a park. But Ethan had been working in silence. He paid all back taxes for the property, updated every record, and ensured that his name, Ethan Marshall, was the only rightful owner in the county database. He created a master file, hundreds of pages proving ownership, fraud, and timeline inconsistencies. And when construction finally ended and the HOA filed for permanent community status, Ethan's attorney filed a quiet but powerful land reclamation case. The court date was set for the following month. The same week the HOA celebrated its one-year anniversary. Ethan attended the celebration incognito, standing in the back as residents cheered Victoria on stage. She gave a grand speech about honesty and unity. Ethan smiled quietly. "Enjoy your applause," he whispered. "You earned it on my land." The deed revealed. The courtroom was crowded. Reporters filled the benches.
Homeowners whispered, "Glutching hoa pamlet."
At the front, Victoria and her legal team looked confident, sleek, and smug. Ethan entered calmly, carrying one brown leather folder.
No entourage. No teatrix.
Just quiet purpose. The judge called the case, Marshall versus Meadowbrook HOA. Victoria's lawyer began first, arguing that the development was legally approved through municipal zoning transfers. Then came Ethan's turn. He stood, opened the folder, and handed the clerk the original deed, handwritten, notarized, with a county seal older than Victoria herself. Then came the updated records, the tax receipts, the email chains, and the notarized proof of non-transfer. The courtroom grew silent. The judge flipped through the documents slowly, then looked up. "Mr. Marshall, these are authentic. This land was never sold." Gasps filled the room.
Victoria stood, red-faced.
"That's impossible. We have approvals." The judge interrupted. "Approvals built on fraudulent signatures are not valid. The HOA built on property that legally belongs to Mr. Marshall." The next words changed everything. Ownership reverts immediately to the plaintiff. Cameras flashed. Residents whispered in panic. Victoria slumped into her chair, speechless. Ethan didn't smile. He just said softly, "I never wanted this fight, but you forced me to defend what was mine." The quiet victory. The ruling shook the entire community. Overnight, news outlets ran the headline. "Man reclaims land after HOA builds 96 homes on his property." The HOA dissolved within a week. Victoria resigned and vanished from the spotlight. Lawyers scrambled to negotiate settlements. But Ethan didn't seek revenge. He met with the residents, ordinary families who had no idea of the corruption behind their homes. He could have evicted them. He could have demanded millions. Instead, he offered them a deal: remain on the land as tenants under a fair lease, with rent payments going toward a community fund. In exchange, each family would contribute to building something meaningful, a public park, open to everyone, named Marshall Grove, after his grandfather. At first, people were skeptical. But when they saw Ethan planting trees himself on weekends, everything changed. The community joined him. Months later, the park opened, a wide green field with benches, gardens, and a plaque that read, "In memory of those who protect what truly belongs to them, with patience and integrity." Ethan stood under the same oak tree that once watched over empty fields. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the homes golden. Children played nearby. He closed his eyes and whispered, "Grandpa Land's finally alive again. The right way." And for the first time in years, Ethan smiled, not because he'd won, but because justice had bloomed on the same soil where his family once dreamed.